Today, I'm flying on Asia's cheapest business class aboard Philippine Airlines Boeing 777, where I'll show you the good and mostly bad, and whether it's worth your peso or pound, as I fly from Bangkok Suvarnabhumi Airport to Manila NAIA International Airport. Kumusta at maligayang pagdating sa bagong video mula sa Kalam Alston. Salamat sa panonood. Welcome to Bangkok's primary airport, Suvarnabhumi. You joined me a couple of hours after landing late in from Abu Dhabi on Etihad, where I almost didn't make this flight. You see, that late arrival ate into my separate connection of about 3 hours. However, in classic PAL, or general Philippine aviation style, we ended up being about 3 hours delayed, so we had plenty of time on this connection. I'll explain at the end of the video why this is Asia's cheapest business class. But for now, please be sure to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and be sure to drop a comment or question on this Philippine Airlines experience. We're now heading to the boarding gate, where PAL swiftly treated all passengers like cattle as we headed towards the bus and our Boeing 777 aircraft. While most people do hate buses, and I don't particularly love the crowdedness, I love getting off them for the view of these magnificent planes that will take us in the sky. Now we're aboard, here's the large forward business cabin with this rather retro seat which you don't see much of nowadays. Although, it's not all bad. These old seats were rather comfy with plenty of padding and an armrest that goes down to make extra space. The seat has some preset position buttons at the drinks tray, or more specific buttons for that exact positioning you're looking for under the armrest. 2 lights are then found at the centre alongside the remote control and headphone jack. The airline provides some average over-ear headphones which you cannot take off the aircraft. Meanwhile, an economy style scratchy blanket is of course provided. I was a little concerned because my screen was deployed in its off position, but eventually I managed to get back into position before takeoff, although no thanks to the crew, who didn't help despite seeing my struggle with this. Refreshing tropical juice was offered as our pre-departure drink in lieu of champagne, I assume for taxation reasons. Thanks to the hefty delay, we ended up departing Bangkok around 1:30 in the morning and arriving in the Philippines at 0600, which made for a pretty poor night's sleep. Although the original 3:20 arrival into NAIA wasn't much better. Soon enough, it was time for the heart of the Filipino safety video, a rather classy affair from Philippine Airlines that showcases all the country in its glory. Did have to wonder about the safety of this staff on the Thai Vietjet aircraft just over from us. While I have cut down on the takeoff videos in recent videos, this flight at nighttime really showcased how large and importantly impressive Suvarnabhumi Airport is. From the ground you don't quite get the same feel for what the scale of the airport is. With a late night service offered, there wasn't a ton of time to test everything on this short hop to Manila. I did manage to test out the seat functions and quickly get it into bed mode. It takes about a minute or so to fully recline and is a little narrow. There's no foot cubby, which makes it great for those who hate the more modern setups on seats. It's also backed up with a rather hefty pillow, which made great support. It's also pretty good if you're traveling with a companion and want to chat, which many airlines don't put much emphasis on nowadays. One villainous seat in every row of this aircraft, and there's the middle one. I highly doubt many people would choose to sit here, except on the most busy of flights, and it could make a really awkward experience for most passengers unless you're prone to travelling groups of 3. There is a reason why airlines have mostly all got rid of these middle seats. Apart from us, who sat in the front rows, passengers in other rows get a larger screen than what we had. Speaking of screens, and that entertainment system was a little retro and it hasn't been updated in a number of years. However, the selection of content was okay. You probably might want to bring your own downloads of films, YouTube, or perhaps your favourite aviation YouTuber here to watch on board. The screen itself could be controlled through a rather dodgy retro style touchscreen, or slightly better through the included remote control. Plenty of films, including a dedicated Filipino selection, were available, although selection of content on series were rather lacking. The maps were basic but did the job, while the main screens at the front of the cabin also displayed it at all times throughout the flight, and of course fitted out with Windows XP style screensavers in tow. Now for a quick check of the bathroom, and there's lots of their own brand amenities including moisturiser, cologne, and a shared Colgate mouthwash. Slightly unhygienic, but there were some cups there to pour into. All pretty unremarkable, but the space was kept clean. Time for some food, one of the key areas of the flight which are different to economy class. The tray table flips out from the center. On this flight, there was only one option for starter, while 3 were available for main, including 1 Filipino, 1 Western, and 1 Chinese option. There was a surprisingly large drink selection, I may add, including Louis de Socky Concours, champagne once in the air, and you can tell I've been learning Filipino and not French because that pronunciation was awful. And I must say that this was unfortunately a pretty bland meal. Strangely, they served the dessert alongside the starter, which had little flavour and just a solitary prawn in there. Things didn't get much better for the main though, with a pretty poor attempt at beef caldereta, a kind of Filipino beef stew, with a lump of rice dropped in for good measure. This could pass in economy or premium economy, but it's just not very good for business class. Meanwhile, this is the cream spinach stuffed pork, which tasted a little better, but the pork was rather dry, and I wasn't sure if it was something that had been catered from Bangkok or been brought all the way over from Manila. For dessert, I finished the Sahara dried chocolate fudge cake, but topped it off with a Haagen-Dazs ice cream, which made my throat a little bit more moist. I spent the remainder of the flight in bed mode, listening to some podcasts and music, trying to get a little sleep. However, the crew were making a lot of chatter and noise in the galley while moving plates and cutlery around. We came to land into Manila's Ninoy Aquino International Airport quite late, although no compensation was given, and parked up beside a much superior Asian airline in Japan Airlines. Thankfully, immigration on this visit was a breeze, surprisingly. So what did I make of the Philippine Airlines experience? I wasn't exactly going into it with super high expectations for Philippine Airlines having the best business class in all of Asia, because frankly, I've seen other people's opinions and I knew it wasn't going to be the best I'd ever been on. However, I think it was maybe slightly below what them expectations were. So firstly, the delays happen. However, it was quite a long one, so put that aside. The experience of getting from the terminal to the aircraft was rather poor. Putting all passengers into the same bus, having to rush to get on. It wasn't a very premium experience for me who was a business class passenger, but generally it just wasn't very well organised in terms of the boarding process. Getting on board, the crew were not great. The airline really prides itself on having Filipino hospitality, and generally you get some of the best hospitality in the world in the Philippines. Philippine Airlines sort of just does this down. They are not very representative of the hospitality that is offered in the country. And I didn't think the crew were very good. They weren't bad, they just weren't amazing, like some of their promotional materials tries to show. And the seat itself, actually, it's not bad, apart from that middle seat, which I wouldn't want to be taking. Any other seat on the plane is okay. Definitely if you're traveling with a companion like I was, it was actually a pretty good experience. But the one thing I will add is that if you're flying this aircraft on a flight from the US, I think it's on a number of routes to the US and Canada, such as Vancouver, it is dreadful, and I wouldn't know why anybody would choose this over something else unless it was substantially cheaper, because you'd have the option of taking someone like Singapore Airlines, ANA on a connecting service, or United on a direct service, and I think American as well. And it's just really not competitive. Now that will be resolved with the introduction of some Airbus A350s over the coming years, and that experience will get better. Right now, if that aircraft was scheduled on a long haul route, it just wouldn't really be very good. And then there's the food. The food was edible. That's a very low bar for business class. As I said earlier in the review, it just wasn't very tasteful. Now, Filipino food doesn't have the best reputation out of all Asian cuisines. That was a very poor representation. The drink selection was great, and actually the entertainment was decent as well, even if it could do with an upgrade. Now, why do I call this Asia's cheapest business class? And I don't know every single route throughout the Asia Pacific region and every single cost. There is a very good hack that you can take on board for getting cheap flights on Philippine Airlines. Now, if you have a return flight from somewhere like Bangkok to Manila or a one-way flight, they're pretty expensive in line with other carriers across the region. If you do something a bit more strategic, a bit more clever, you can get some really good pricing on Philippine Airlines. So on this trip, I had my flight into Asia from Europe, from London, Abu Dhabi into Bangkok, and on the return it was Singapore, Abu Dhabi, London. So as I was going to the Philippines, I needed to get a way to go there. For good content, I decided to go with Philippine Airlines in business class, and it works out if you do a multi-city break. So I did Bangkok, Manila, and then spent about 8-9 days in Manila in the Philippines and went to a number of islands, and then did Manila to Singapore. This worked out a lot cheaper, and it worked out about £300 or 20,000 pesos for that trip, but it worked out a really good pricing on that, and you can get a very similar price today by doing something very similar. So be sure to tell me what you thought of Philippine Airlines business class on the Boeing 777. Like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. If you are Filipino, what do you think of PAL? I know that a lot of Filipinos do not like it and would rather fly with other airlines. I probably agree. I will also have their A321 business class coming up, which I was actually very surprised with and enjoyed it more than this flight. I'm Callum Elson. Maraming salamat sa lahat sa inyo. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again in another video very soon. Bye bye.